you just keep trying. And like the sad part is like they give you what, like 5-10 minutes to basically prove yourself to them. And that's, I think, where you just got to be like, I'm going to be my complete self. And I got to have the mindset that I deserve to be here no matter what. And that I'm going to kick butt in this field. And so please, like, give me, you know, put your chips in my basket because I'm going to give it back. But it's just hard because I don't think, just like med school, like no one's going to tell you exactly how to get in, because then everyone would get in.
Melissa and Haley of Pediatric Speech Pals, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Yeah, so first I just wanted to say how impressed I am with your guys' YouTube page, because I was searching around for possible guests, and when I came across your page, it's super informative. I love the thumbnails, like very professional, very aesthetic. Like seriously, like YouTube, like I feel like when you see a good thumbnail and the kind of design of the thumbnail is consistent across the page with like different variations, it looks very aesthetically pleasing. So when I first clicked on the page, I was like, oh wow, like this is a good page to look at.
Oh, well, shout out to David, our producer.
Yeah, we try.
Yeah, shout out to David.
Yeah, we love you, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look back at our first ones, they're not right.
Yeah. I guess that's with everything. The first one is always the worst, and then it just gets better from there.
Yeah, you learn.
You live and you learn.
Yeah. So before you started Pediatric Speech Pals, what drew you both to speech language pathology?
Yeah, Melissa, you go first on this one.
Okay. So my mom was a speech pathologist, and also my aunt was a speech pathologist. So I kind of like grew up in the field, and like from day one knew I wanted to do speech. So I was really lucky in that sense, because you have to do grad school, you know? And so like I knew going into undergrad, I had to do grad school. So I knew that like, you know, you need the grades, you need the this, you need the that. So I feel like that was a really lucky like path for me, because I knew that that was what was going in. But I know it's so different for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people have to do the post-bac, and a lot of people just don't know what they want to do. So yeah, I feel grateful that I knew what I wanted to do going in. But yeah, it was my mom and my aunt who led me there.
Yeah, that's so lucky that you had that as your role model. Mine was a little different.
Yeah. Go ahead. How did you get into SLP?
I actually wanted to be a pediatrician, and my pediatrician said, don't ever be a pediatrician.
There you go.
Not that there's anything wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with being a pediatrician, but he was like, either you have to love this so much, and that there's just like a lot of negative sides to being a pediatrician, a lot of sick kids, which is your job. And I'm like too much of an empath to take on that job. And so he was like, oh, check out speech. And then I shouted a few people. And like, well, I shouted to some adults, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm like, these like they were like 100 years old, like stroke patients, like they're trying to just get them to swallow some applesauce. I'm like, this is miserable. Not that other people could do it for sure. And then I went to a pediatric clinic, and she just was playing games all day. And I was like, this is your job? She goes, yeah, pretty much. And then by some, like so lucky of me, I went back to school after they told me like it's a specific program. My undergrad had the program, and so I just slid right into it. So I got lucky too.
Yeah, well, good for the pediatrician for being honest about how much he liked the career, because I feel like I've also had a few moments like that too when I was like later in high school and going through college, where someone's telling me about their career, and I'm like, oh, this sounds cool, this sounds great. And at the end of the conversation, they're like, never do this.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's it. That's like the exact opposite of what you just said. They're like, trust me,
I really love it, but it sucks.
Yeah, I love it, but like no one should ever get into the thing that I'm doing.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that's good. So like it sounds like you wanted to do something in healthcare just based on being drawn towards being a pediatrician, and then like also some of the interest in adults, and then finally making your way to kids. So like both of you guys knew that you at least wanted to do something in healthcare somewhat earlier on.
For sure. Yeah. Always. Healthcare, particularly with children, which there's only so many
Yeah.
avenues for that.
Well, I actually thought I wanted to do the adults at first for like a long time.
Yeah.
And then my mom was like, just wait, Melissa, just wait until you see the kids. Cause I'm a kids person, but I was like, oh, but the adults are so interesting and blah, blah, blah. And like going on like that. And my mom was like, just wait, Melissa, just wait until you get a child rotation. And then I did. And I was like, game over. I love it. So, that's how we went peds, I guess.
Yeah. So for people who may be deciding whether they want to work with kids versus adults, if they're a speech pathologist, or maybe it's just another career in general where you have that option, something else in healthcare, what are some of your favorite things working with kids, like looking back on it now, make you grateful for the decision to go that direction?
A lot of things.
I had an internship, also any job shadows, any like being an SLPA, like Haley, being just in the pediatric field or like the adult field or like wherever you want to be in, just like putting yourself in there. Like I got my internship by just cold emailing. Luck of the draw. I don't think it's like common, but luck of the draw. So I think that like it happened. So I always like tell people like, hey, just send the email. You never know. So like, I think that any experience in that little field or like in that little spot is good because you can see like, okay, this is like what the day-to-day life would be like. This is like what the population is like, because some people can say they like kids, but then, when you go in front of them and you're working with the parents and the kids and the toys and the other kids, and it can become a lot. And so I think that, putting yourself in it is like the best way to start. Would you agree, Haley?
For sure. Oh, for sure. I would just dive into it. And honestly, kids are the best. I think you mentioned like what are some of the reasons why we stay in kids. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely bad days for sure. Kids are tough
And
at the same
bad
time.
kids.
And back, they're difficult. I would say they're difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's part of the job. But what makes me stay is like those small moments of like victories, where it's like you and that kid somehow like are on the same like wavelength for like a small second, and then you guys like either like are super excited together, like you both like whatever, we build a Lego tower and we're both like working hard and we did it, and it's like this small like connection, or you just see like, I think the best is like you hear, we work in early intervention and a lot of the small ones, so a lot of our kids are crying and sad, and it's just another form of communication, but like a lot of frustration. And as soon as like you see that like you gave them like another outlet or, of how they can communicate to relieve that frustration, like it's just like so rewarding. I don't know. And I don't know. Every day is a reward, and they say the funniest things.
Yeah, they do. I've my younger cousins, they're a little bit older now, but even from the time they were like 5 or 6 years old, like some kids are so unintentionally funny, and you can just like see them go, and it just provides entertainment for the entire evening. Like, you can't wait to, like, the adult conversation is so boring, and you're just like, I just want to like listen to these kids like try to tackle adult problems.
Yes,
it's entertaining.
They have absolutely no filter, no filter.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've been told I have so many boo-boos on my face.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Melissa, you mentioned the cold emails, and I think that's a really good point. No matter what business you're in, just having the confidence to email people out of nowhere that you've, maybe had limited to no contact with, because it's such a low effort thing. Like, it might take you 5 minutes to write an email, and the worst thing that happens is someone says no or doesn't get back to you, and you could blast out hundreds of those a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to hit on that for whoever's listening to this, no matter what field. Like, if you're doubting whether to send an email or not, just send it, because it could literally change your career, and it takes, maybe 5 minutes.
And I think you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help. Like a lot of people, either they'll be like, yeah, I can't do an internship, but I can set up a 10-minute call to talk to you, or, I can't do an internship, but, I can do this. And mine wasn't an internship. Like it ended up being a paid internship, but when I was doing it, it was like a 1-day volunteer thing. And then she was like, actually, you know what? I can give you an internship. Actually, you know what? I can pay you. And I was like, okay. Like, it just kind of like got more and more as we were emailing. So like, I feel like I'm a huge proponent for like, just do it, just try it. Like, you never know. And so like, even now, like, as you know, an SLP running a business, I would have been like, yeah, sure. Like, come on. I mean, there are limitations obviously, but like, I think that, you got to pay it
Yeah, and they
forward.
might know somebody else too. Like they're like, I can't help you, but I know
Yeah.
Melissa can help you, which is great too.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's the story behind starting Pediatric Speech Pals as a content platform? Because it's one thing to be an SLP, it's a completely different thing to try to translate that into a podcast, into communication materials. Like it's a very involved process. And I didn't realize all the things that are involved with podcasting until I actually jumped into it. So like what was the process behind you guys starting Pediatric Speech Pals?
I think about this a lot. I think when me and Melissa, I think, met for coffee once, and we were like, we need to do something. We need to tell people, more, or like we have both very unique backgrounds and like we do the same thing, but we're a different route. And then she was like, well, David kind of knows how to do podcasting stuff. So like, what if we did podcasting? And I was like, I'm down. I'm like, let's see what happens. And then I don't even know. I don't even remember how we got to the first episode. Do you?
I feel like what happened was like Haley would come over because we were friends from the
First practice, yeah.
clinic. And yeah, like where I was, she would come over and we'd hang out. It was like bachelor nights and we were like, talking about our sessions, talking about our stuff. And we could do that because
we worked in the same place.
But like, and so like we were talking about like SLP, being an SLP. And then I moved and then we were still like, man, like I miss like talking like that. And so we just like every time we got together, we were still talking about it. And we were like, hey, what if we started like something for it? Because I feel like, yeah, because like I feel like there was kind of like, and not that I was like thinking about this when we started it, but I just kind of feel like there was a gap there, like where I'm like, man, I wish I had known this
for sure.
like going in, like I wish that I could have looked up this, or I wish I could have like seen that or heard that or had that little like friend that I could have turned to. And so I don't know, I think that's kind of how it just
and she was like helping me so much with like trying to get into grad school and giving me advice. And I was like, God, there's got to be more people that, don't just get into grad, like they have troubles getting into grad school or like taking these routes. So essentially what Melissa said, like just sharing the same things that we talk about together with other people.
And we were fortunate to have, David. Obviously, I don't know if it would have come together if we didn't have that aspect. So I think that was lucky.
Speaking of grad school, there's a decent percentage of the podcasts that are people that are in grad school right now for speech, or they're thinking about it. What was the journey like for you guys applying to grad school, getting in, interviewing? Could you give a brief overview of what that process was like, just to give people a taste of what they may expect?
Yeah,
absolutely. Do you want to go first, Haley, or do you want me to?
I'll go really quick, but mine is much different than, I think what makes us great together is because we have both very different routes of I'm actually still in grad school. I'm currently in it right now. And my process is quite difficult. I had a really hard time getting into grad school, and I tried for, I don't know, Melissa, do you know, like 4 years, 3 years, something like that to get in, and like got waitlisted every year and went through interviews. But I basically, I don't know, I did like cold calling to call and be like, what did I do wrong in my application? What will help me better with my essays, and there's like so many routes. So I basically, I think to answer your question is like, I just kept trying and didn't give up and was like, what's going to make me unique and how can I make the best essay? And I would show up to universities and be like, hey, I applied, you didn't accept me. Why didn't you accept me? And then they only can give away so much because, what they tell me, that's their cream of the crop, that's how they accept people and it's their special recipe and they're not going to give that away. And they would give me small tidbits here and there of like how to beef up my essay but basically everyone said, don't stop trying.
That's great. Good for you. I would have never had the guts to roll up to a university, like go to the dean and be like, tell me why. Like, give me a
That's our
reason.
friend Haley there.
Yeah.
I just piss me off enough, I'll get there.
Yeah. So good for you. So it took about 3 or 4 years to get in. Then you eventually got accepted, obviously, to a school, and so that ended up paying off. Just like the perseverance of calling and applying and things
Yes.
like that. And I'm sure like adding stuff to your resume along the way.
For sure, I think it all helps, you know. As my dad says every day, he has a giant photo in my bedroom at their house. What do you do different? So that's been our motto for forever. And I guess you could use that for literally anything, getting a job, you know, meeting friends, or getting anything. What do you do different is what he tells me all the time.
Yeah, I like that. What about you, Melissa?
Yeah, my experience was a little different, I think, again, because I knew going in what I wanted to do. So I think I was in the mindset of, oh, got to get into grad school. Oh, got to get into, you know, like the next step, got to do this. So I was just like focused on school. Like, and not that Haley wasn't, but I don't know, like, you know, I didn't know her in undergrad, but like, you know, I just like, it was my life, you know, like school was my life. So I did pretty well, and I, you know, was fortunate to get into a couple schools and was able to pick the one that was my top. And, you know, I think that that's, you know, I was extremely grateful. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, you know, especially now looking back, like at the time, you know, I was like, oh yeah, that was just the next step, you know, like, and you understand also because you show up for these interviews and there's like hundreds of people and they pick like 30 or something or 28 or something. So like you understand the grasp of like, because that was like already a level, you know, like there's thousands of people who apply, and then hundreds of people get the interview, and then like 30 are chosen, 28 are chosen, or whatever. And so like you understand the grasp, but then when you like see it, you're like, okay, whoa, you know, like this is a lot of people. And then like I said, like at the time I was just like, oh yeah, you know, whatever, it was the next step. But like, you know, looking back a little bit too, I'm like, man, I was super grateful for the ability to like go straight through, and like the fact that like I didn't have to go to those schools and like, you know, do that. So yeah, as much as I can offer, I think Haley has a lot of really good insight, and like I appreciate that aspect of the podcast so much, because I think that she has a lot of really good information and like insight on that, a bit like skill that she has. Cause like, you know, I don't know what I would have done, you know, like I think, you know, we keep telling people, keep trying, do it. And I think that that's true. I think if you want to be an SLP, which I did, I probably would have kept doing it. But yeah, like Haley's got that tenacity. She's sweet. She's good. She's
Oh
got
gosh,
it.
thank you,
So,
Melissa.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how competitive grad school is for speech until I started working in the industry, and I was like hearing stories from therapists and stuff like that where, you know, they're trying for years and years, and it sound like I hear people talk about medical school in similar ways where I'm like, holy crap, like this is crazy to get in. Like you show up, there's hundreds of people for interviews, you're going through this whole process. You don't just get accepted. Like you have to go through like talking to multiple tiers of people. So good for you guys for finding your own way in. That's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, I think you just,
thank
you just
you.
keep trying. And like the sad part is like they give you what, like 5-10 minutes to basically prove yourself to them. And that's, I think, where you just gotta be like, I'm gonna be my complete self, and I gotta have the mindset that I deserve to be here no matter what, and that I'm gonna kick butt in this field. And so please, like, give me, you know, put your chips in my basket, because I'm going to give it back. But it's just hard because I don't think, just like med school, like no one's going to tell you exactly how to get in, because then everyone would get in, right? So I think it's one of those things where you just have to keep trying and then try different routes. If that didn't work, try a different way. And then thankfully, like me and Melissa, I think both have two different sides of the coin to like share on this. So, and we're both, she's in the field and an SLP, so she can kind of share like, hey, this would probably look good for this and things like that. So that's important as well.
Yeah. So Melissa, you're an SLP, and Haley, you're an SLPA, speech language pathologist and a speech language pathologist assistant. Could you guys talk about some of the major differences between those paths and kind of what drew you in those directions?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I guess like when you look at it like intervention wise, there's not too much of a difference. Like Haley treats patients. There are some like restrictions, like, hey, you can't treat a patient who has,
Epilepsy.
certain diagnoses or certain things like that. But overall, like, she just can't evaluate. So she can't do like the assessments. She can't write the reports.
Can't
So that's,
diagnose.
I guess, the main, yeah, I can't diagnose. That's the main difference between an SLP and an SLPA. And especially because she was in a clinic, I think you had a lot more wiggle room there too.
Yeah, it's all like in the contingency. So like as a SLPA, you have as SLP supervisor. So basically they sign off on everything that you do. So every note that you do, everything is in the contingency that like, so like all the some of the diagnoses that Melissa, had mentioned, or it's all the like I can treat as long as I am like with an SLP. So like depending on where it is, like thankfully like in where we like the small clinics and the practices, like we're all together all the time. I think it's really shows differences in like maybe a hospital setting or a school setting where the SLP isn't with you all the time. So that's pretty much what the difference is.
Yeah. And being an SLPA is a great route for, like, say you want more, like, there's a lot of people who don't want to go straight to grad school after, like, they want the gap year. So it's not even like a denial thing. It's like, it's also you're going because you choose that route. Like, you want experience. You think it'll help you in general. You're done with school,
Yeah.
And there were people from my undergrad who did it and went straight there too, just like I said, for that gap and just to make some money. And so I don't think it's not like a route to look at,
No.
look at and be like, oh gosh, I have to be an SLPA,
No.
because like a lot of people choose it.
Yeah.
And we
I love it.
our SLPAs.
I love it. And I
Yeah.
think it's only
We
given
love
me a leg up in grad school, like for sure.
Yeah.
So as an SLPA, that could be a good opportunity to get a taste of what the field is like
For
before
sure.
taking the plunge into grad school.
100%. That's what I would
Totally.
recommend if you're iffy and not sure. Like I was kind of iffy. I was like, I'm like, is this good? I don't know. And I did it. And you get to experience the field for it, like its entire, the entire spectrum of it. So like you're not just because you're a SLPA, you don't miss out on anything. Like you get to see everything that you'd want. So you'd really get the full experience of what it would be like to be an SLP. And it helps, especially because grad school is expensive. So like, if you're like, I don't know if I'm willing want to pay all this money,
That's for sure.
then try this.
That's the thing about grad school too, is that's when you get the hands-on experience. So like all undergrad is like theoretical. So like so many people go to grad school, spend all this money and time, and then they're like, I don't even like it. Like, so they do all of this and then they kind of regret it. So that's also another reason why we really recommend job shadowing, getting yourself in the field. SLP is a great way, or SLPA way, SLPA is a great way to get that, sort of experience, because you just don't know if it's the field for you until like everything's passed and now you're in it. Because even when you're in grad school, obviously you're not the SLP yet, like you're learning little bits and pieces, but you're like, oh, I might like it more if I do this, or I might like it more if it's me running the sessions exactly, and sometimes you don't. And so unfortunately there are people who go through all of it and are still like, I don't like it. Like, what's the next route for me? And maybe this was already their second route, because in grad school you get so many people from different, areas of fields before.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it can just be kind of a huge bummer if that's what happens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I can speak to the importance of shadowing because I didn't do it enough in undergrad. I was majoring in accounting and was also playing baseball, so like my summers were spent off in a league playing instead of doing internships, and I'm doing accounting this whole time. And then I finally graduated, like I'm studying for the CPA, which is the accounting exam, and then also got a job in the accounting field, and I just realized how much I hated it. And if I had an experience before that, where it's like, this is what it's going to be like to work as an accountant, maybe junior summer, sophomore summer, like instead of doing baseball, which I loved, but like just even for like a month, maybe did like an internship over winter break, I would have maybe switched majors or just like,
Tried something else.
done something else completely. So I
Yeah.
definitely think it's important to get a taste of what you think you might be interested
For
in,
sure.
because you never actually know until you're doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, and like in school, what do you take those like, online like, oh, what's going to be the best for you? And you type it all in like elementary school or whatever. And then, I mean, I used to always rig them to get
Oh my
to get
God.
so worked out for me.
Yeah.
But I'd be like,
Wait, you
kids,
Yes.
yeah.
Pick me.
In school, sure.
wait, you said you rigged them to get SLP?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, no, there
Melissa's
you
already
go.
been ahead of the game.
Like in my head, I was like, which is like cheating, like that's not what you're supposed to do, what your little heart
Yes.
tells you to answer, and then
Yeah.
that's where it's supposed to lead you. But my heart was like, no, this is what you're doing. Luckily it worked
Yeah.
out, but
Yeah.
I mean, that should be the real entrance exam to grad school, like what your
yeah.
BuzzFeed job selection is when you put
Yes.
and you're like, I got SLP,
Yeah. Like,
so like here we
Yeah.
go.
sounds great.
See what I got? Yeah.
Yeah. Haley, you said you work in a clinic most of the time,
Yes.
and Melissa, you're more of a home setting, or your clinic too?
In home.
What are some of the biggest challenges, or just like kind of the day to day, and what both of you guys do, so people can get a little bit of an idea of clinic versus the home setting?
Yes. So I work in a multidisciplinary clinic, meaning like there's OTs, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, as well as speech therapists. The difference is, I guess the biggest is that they go into like a brick and mortar place and then everything's there. So like whatever is needed, all the toys are there, all the facilities there, any of the feeding things are there, everything's there. So they come there, and then usually the kids receive most of the services there. So they'll get speech, occupational therapy, and PT as well. So I work like hand in hand with all the therapists. We co-treat a lot. So like I would treat at the same time as an occupational therapist, and we'll work together to like work with the child. So I think that's a big difference. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest, I would say.
Do you have a challenge?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it's just
Yeah,
ahead
maybe.
of you.
I
Yeah.
guess maybe
challenges in
sometimes
front
I
of
don't
you.
get a break from other therapists. We just are together all the time.
There you go.
So my clinic, in
That's fair.
particular, is like a shared space clinic. So the clinic where me and Melissa met, everyone had kind of their own rooms, and we would like treat in our own rooms. And then we had a gym where you could like go into the gym. This particular clinic that I'm in, everything is like together. We don't share, like everything is shared. So there's kids everywhere.
Yeah, I could see how that can become a little bit of a nuisance, or a little bit of a challenge, like having to share spaces with people. Like just having a roommate can be a challenge. So if you're sharing a workspace with people like
Yeah.
8 hours a day,
yeah.
like
It's all the time. It's all the
Um,
time. If
that-
one kid's
yeah.
screaming, it's screaming for everybody.
there you go.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest challenge is scheduling. Like it's always been the hardest part of the in-home part for me. And I do my own schedule. I always have, even when it wasn't my own business. But it was like every parent has a certain time that you can see them. And when I was in San Diego, it was like you're driving 30 minutes to one client, and then 35 minutes to the next client. And it was just a lot of driving. And then sometimes you show up and people would no show you. And
that
for
sucks.
certain companies, you don't get paid for those. And so you're like, okay, like that hurts,
Yeah.
And so like things like that can be kind of hard. Also, like the way that, so I came from the way that Haley was, where it was like the PTs, the OTs, the ABA therapists all together, and speech therapists and everything. And like it was so collaborative, and I loved that. And so like going from that to like in home, where now it's just me, like I'm constantly like trying to reach out, because I love the collaborative. I think it's the best way to treat. I think that, like that's how you help clients the most. And if they need, all those other extras, or other, professionals. But if they do have that, then I usually just encourage the parents, like, hey, if you want me to talk to your ABA therapist, like, so we can, they see them so often, like I can give them some communication strategies, because a lot of times they don't really know the full communication strategies. Like they don't really know fully what they're doing there. And so like you'll go in and they'll have some skills that are just like a little too high for the kid, or they're just not like, they're not where they should be, whatever. So you're just like, can I help? Like, let's do this. So I'm really trying to incorporate myself and be like, if you want this, like, obviously parents have to sign off on it, but incorporating myself with the other professionals is another challenge. It's just like, sometimes parents don't follow through. Well, they'll decide to believe one therapist over the other, things like that, where you're just kind of like, like that's just a bummer, because there could be more, like progress here if we all worked together. So things like that.
Yeah, and just speaking to some therapists at all about kids, I know that travel can be a huge nuisance. Like I've heard stories of, therapists driving hour and a half in Long Island, and then they get ghosted. No one's there. The parent cancels like when they're in their car outside. And obviously everything changed once the pandemic hit. So every practice was scrambling to get teletherapy, to get that online as soon as possible. So it was a big shift and a lot of stress in the short term. But I know from speaking to those same therapists that not having those travel issues with the teletherapy was a huge headache. Like there were headaches that came along with doing teletherapy, but just being able to like do it, as I'm sure you guys can speak to, but like just not having the travel of like having to drive an hour, 30 minutes, and then do that every single day was also a big benefit to teletherapy, along with the
mad props to Melissa for the traveling.
Yeah, totally.
I did it once in ABA, and I cannot stand it, and I've never heard Melissa complain about it once. So she's doing something right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind the traveling, because like then I can call my mom, I can listen to music, I can like, so like I don't or podcasts. I mean, that's how I listen to some of your podcasts and stuff. So like, some of them are like, sometimes it's not the issue is the travel. Although I'm not gonna lie, the 35 minutes like constantly to a client when you have like, however many days gets long. But I mean, overall, like it's when they don't show up, and then that's when it becomes like, oh,
come on, people.
So yeah, don't ghost. Relationship or professional,
we're canceling ghost culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. New 2023 resolution.
You heard it here first.
Cancel ghost culture. Yeah. So I also did some deep diving on like SLP forums, Facebook, Reddit, to see what other people were saying were some of the biggest challenges. So I wanted to list the 3 that I was seeing the most off and see if you guys resonate with that. I think one of them we already mentioned, but the big 3 seem to be, 1 was unrealistic caseload expectations, 2 is mountains of paperwork, and 3 was parents not supporting SLPs outside of the sessions.
So
like
following
not
through
really
home programs,
taking the insights and stuff like that. Do you guys resonate with that at all? Like, have you experienced those challenges, and like have those been the biggest 3 to you guys? Have you had other challenges that have been more prevalent? Like how would you respond to those sorts of comments about SLP challenges?
I think that the caseload and the paperwork, like a lot of that is school setting.
And the
parent,
I would say the parent.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Parent carryovers too.
The parents everywhere. Yeah, the parent is everywhere, I think. But I do think like the caseload and the paperwork, like school SLPs are pushed to the rim, and they have so many, and it's, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here. And so like, that's an absolute grind for them. Like it's like, it's hard. Outside in the clinics, I think you have a little bit more. I mean, Haley can speak a little bit more on that, but like, as far as like me, like, I feel like because I do, pick my schedule, I have a lot of flexibility there, which is cool. I pick the hours I want to work, usually, unless a parent like says, hey, I got to do this hour, but I pick the hours usually I want to work, the amount of clients I usually want to work. I think private practice has a lot of flexibility there. But I mean, as far as like getting the parents to do it, I feel like it's also a little bit easier because you're talking to the parents, whereas at schools, like, unless it's like an IEP or the parent comes in, you really never see them. But yeah, so you can be like, hey, like, if this is too like high level, like, if you're not going to be able to do this like at home, like, let me know. Like, that's part of my work to like try and make this so you can do this, because like that's what you want, is for it to be generalized and for them to be able to do it at home. And so, that's my take on on that.
I think
What do you think, Haley, as far as
yes. I think in terms of caseload, like managing it, like I think as Melissa said, there's like the overflow where it's like the schools where it's just constantly kids after kid after kid. And you kind of don't, I felt like when I've done my school placement and then when I have friends who work in the schools, I feel like the rapport with the children's much different. It's just not the same. Like as when I see my kids, I see them the same time every week. In terms of caseload at private practice, I think the biggest problem is like filling a schedule. I think that can be difficult sometimes, like kind of, and like in terms of like pay, I guess. So like you don't get paid. So like most clinics are private practice, you get paid hourly, and then you don't get paid. You get paid like you either don't get paid for like a cancellation, and then if the kid or something, depends on the clinic, you get like paid partially if they don't show up. And there's like so many cancellations all the time, and this is just, I think, common, especially in the last few years with like all COVID and the sicknesses, and then RSV came, and it's just like one thing after another. So I think that can be really difficult too. I think that's definitely a con in the private practice is like, it's like schools, like you go to school, you're going because you get the schedule, you get the pension, you get like, you're basically set salary. Private practice is usually like hourly, so you depending on how many kids showed up, so that can be like in terms of like your comment about the caseload. That's I think what in the private practice world, that's pretty much what I hear complained about all the time. Like, oh, only 2 of my kids showed up today, and that means you're only getting paid for 2 hours of work. So like that sucks. And then parent carry,
it's a raw deal.
Definitely will change your paycheck a lot. So I think that's probably
for the parents not being supportive outside of a session. Have you had a specific situation that comes to mind where maybe you were dealing with a difficult parent and you were able to communicate to them somehow a way to handle things outside of the session so that the kid was making better progress?
Oh, for sure.
I think honestly, it just comes down to like parents want to help, It's like if you communicate how to do these strategies, like a lot of times we walk in there and we're like, okay, here's what we can do. Here's what you should do. Here's what I'm doing. Why is this blah, 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 blah. And so like, it can be overwhelming. And so if you come in there and you're like, listen, like, I realize I just gave you a whole bunch of strategies. Like, let's, take this down and think like real life level, like how can we implement these, and like teaching them how to do these strategies rather than just like giving it, saying, oh, this is what you do. Okay, bye. Like if you're like really helping them, like, is this manageable? Is 10 minutes manageable? Is 5 minutes manageable? And like, even though best practice is like here, it's like, we're trying to do these little steps and not like assuming 0 to 60, this parent, we're just going to come in here and assume, oh, parent's going to do everything we say now, because that's just not realistic and they won't. So like, you just kind of have to work with them as like, oh, like, oh, this is great. Look what you're doing right now. Do that. Well, that's cool. Like, that's awesome. Like, and like, just kind of like, show them that they're doing the right things, because a lot of times, again, we're coming in here and you're like, oh, your child isn't speaking, like you must have been doing the wrong thing. And like, that's what I feel like so many parents are like, their mindset is like, I did something wrong, I did this, like I caused this. And it's just like taking that out and being like, no, you didn't. Like, this happens, this is why I have a job. So this is keeps my job alive, is because there's so many people in the similar situations. And like, I think that really helps with carryover and like making sure that parents do it, because like you're on a better relationship with them and they're like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And it's just giving them the strength and like the idea that they can.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you have a list of resources that you may send parents just to help them with stuff outside of sessions, or that may even be helpful to SLPs? Like any of the top resources that come to mind? Of course, you have Pediatric Speech Pals.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Please use us.
Shout out to that.
PSP.
And then if there's anything else that you'll send out, like text a parent, like check this out, like this has been super helpful.
Yeah. We use like a lot of therapists.
Yeah.
So we use Laura Mize. All of her handouts are great for the early intervention kids. We also use I Love Carrie Ebert. These are just SLPs that are just like the best, like the gods of the SLP world. And they have great handouts for like simple, easy to read ones. There's this one too. Do you have it too, Melissa? I got it from Rainbow from our last clinic. But it's like these like strategies of like activities that you could do. Like it's like, oh, do you play with cars?
Oh yeah, like the 20.
Is that what it's called? No, I
Oh.
think differently. I don't know who makes it, but either or, if you could easily Google it. But it's like, oh, do you like cars?
Yeah, we can put it in
Yeah,
the show notes.
You give it to the car, like you play cars. Here's like some strategies you can use while playing with cars, and they give like quick bullet points of like, here, you do this every day.
Yeah, I think it's important though to note, like if somebody were to give, there are parents who you can send handouts to and they'll read them and they'll do them. And there are parents who are like, okay, thanks. And they just toss them and it's just kind of like a waste of paper, So like you really have to like read the room and like understand who you're working with, because if I give people a piece of paper and I'm like, okay, work on these, like blah, blah, like even though I've explained them and like given them, it still doesn't, mean that that's going to follow through. So like sometimes less is a lot more.
I front load a lot. Like I front load my parents a lot. Like, so maybe most of them may say this is mean, but I'm like, hey, it's 70% the parent, 30% the child. So like if you're going to not put in the work, then there's only 30%. And there's an analogy that I give all the time. That's like, I see a kid 20 minutes a week, right? And let's say that he's nonverbal and has to use like a AAC, like an alternative communication device. If this child is only going to use his AAC 20 minutes a day, it's going to take him over 300 years to be able to use it fluently. It's the same for anything that we do. And I mean, I'm just brutally honest.
Yeah,
I'm
those
like,
big numbers
hey
are shocking.
now.
You got to give them those.
Don't put it all
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's work together.
Yeah.
And some parents are like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you guys kind of like a big picture question. So with all of the advancements in technology, like things like VR, also artificial intelligence, I don't know if you guys have used
Yes,
Chat
I have.
GPT yet.
Yes.
Do you guys know that? Very interesting. Also can be kind of weird depending on what you ask it. But I wanted to ask you guys, like, big picture with VR, AI, things like that. Do you see the field of speech pathology going in any interesting directions, incorporating some of those tools within the next, 5-10 years, being able to do like virtual reality sessions or having like some sort of AI assisted therapy, things like that? Could you see that becoming part of the speech pathology field or sessions?
Maybe, I mean, Melissa, ChatGPT is like this AI system. Like, it's like you basically, like if my mom was showing me, they like help front load it when it came out. But like if I wanted to write like an essay for school and be like, write me an essay about speech, it'll generate an entire essay like about speech and like, but it won't be plagiarized. Like it'll be your own words, or like write me a cover letter and it'll like fully write you a cover letter. That's basically what ChatGPT is. And they're like saying it's going to be the new Google. But anyways, that's another story.
Yeah, basically it's like the first major competitor to Google since Google has come out. So now they're trying to like develop their own thing, but it could have
Yes.
consequences for many different types of fields and could be beneficial. So I was just curious if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Truthfully, I don't know if like that stuff will actually affect the terms of therapy, because like I really think where it will affect will be schools, in the grad schools. Like I'm sitting there, my mom's like, oh, you got to write your thesis? Like, here you go. Like she just literally types in like tongue ties or like what, the medical term for it. And then it's like fully writes me an entire essay with everything that I've been spending months researching. And I'm like, seriously? And so I think that's where it will really impact the speech world. I don't know, I don't
even know if that would work though, because then you're not writing it,
It's not plagiarized
so, like,
though. Like it says it's your own words.
I know, but I don't. But you didn't do. You could like not do any of the research and just be like, turn it.
Yeah, then it'll affect like the therapist, and therapy will be bad. But
exactly.
Yeah.
I think our job is so reliant on human connection and like being there and like seeing like, hearing if a child is saying an R wrong, because like so many people get used to it, or like. I think that maybe like it could work as far as like strategies, like you put it on and it's like, has your strategies or, things like that. And then so it's like helping for homework. But as far as like for the weekly sessions or, bi-weekly, however often you do them, I think that a person in person, hopefully, I mean, even over the screen, like, we've tried the whole teletherapy thing and it works in some cases, but in some cases it doesn't. Like it really is reliant on who you're working with and like, and how if parents are willing to put in the effort to do that. And
Yeah. Well,
so
I
I think
yes.
that like it can in some aspects, but I think it can't overall.
I think we're also biased to like, we're only in pediatrics. So like, was just thinking while she was talking, like maybe in adults, like, and they're trying to have like do activities of daily living, like going and ordering coffee, you put your VR on and you go and practice ordering coffee, or like any of those, like
for stuttering or so. Yeah.
Any of those, maybe. Yeah, for sure. In adults, like that whole, or like TBIs, like all those scenarios, totally. But then again, I literally just thought of that while we're thinking. We're just biased, I think, because we are just
resource.
Yeah, we just are just only working with a very small population of like small children. So my 1.5-year-old is gonna rip that off and chuck it. So
yeah. No, but yeah, that's a good point for adults, because I've had some VR experience that are so immersed, like you almost forget you're in it. And if you have objects too, like you're trying to reteach someone to be able to hold a cup of coffee or to be able to move their mouth a certain way or something like that, and you could actually like feel like you're doing an activity and not just sitting in a room, I could see that as being helpful.
But I don't know, even there though, because when I was working with the adults too, it's so much of it is like, rehab, and like, and it's challenging, but that's why it's also like a lot of our job is counseling, and like being there to be like, you can do it. I know you can, you've done it before, you can do it. I know it. And like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure maybe they could figure that out too, but like as some aspects,
emotional
it's like,
connection. There's nothing
that
could
replace
the emotional connection.
Like we're their advocate, like the little rooting on. I just like, I know there's so many people where you're like, okay, let's say this word, and they're just like, I can't, because they can't move their mouth. And it's just, it's so much of it is a mental game that like, if you don't have somebody there to be like, you can do it. I know this is challenging. I know, like, I don't know, but like I can imagine it would be really hard. Like, I think that it would maybe not, like, people wouldn't do it as much.
It won't replace
it. I don't know. I mean,
it won't replace us fully. I think it's just like you said, Melissa, like just another tool, like another resource, like cool thing to use. Like,
I think it could be a great resource. Yeah,
for sure.
Oh yeah, I don't think a job where you require an emotional connection, I don't think something like AI could replace or should replace the human being. I think it would just be more of like an assisted thing
for sure
in the future. Like you could use it, but where
like
you need emotional
wise.
connection.
Yeah,
exactly. Like I saw, speaking of the essays, like this is just like a random thing I saw. A kid already made some machine where he hooked up his computer to like a mechanical arm with a pen in it.
Jesus.
And so he typed in something on something on ChatGPT, and then it spit out the essay, and then the machine was just like writing. I guess his teacher was like, you have to handwrite it, so he hooked it up, and like it just started writing with ChatGPT.
Oh no,
they're so smart.
They're so smart. Yeah, let's have this conversation in like 5 years and recap on how school is.
Yeah. But before we end off, I just wanted to ask you guys quickly, what are some hobbies or things you like to do that de-stress you outside of work?
It's funny you say that, because sometimes I'll be stressed going into work, and then because I'm working with the kids, I'll go in and I'll be like, I'm good now, like, I don't know, like, it's like they're a de-stressor for me, so like there are things that, like, I mean, obviously like the typical de-stressors outside, but like it's usually the kids that are so de-stressing for me. Like that is where I'll end up leaving the session being like, oh my gosh, this is so much better, blah, blah, blah. Like, forget about anything, like that was fun. So I feel like that the sessions are actually de-stressors for me.
That's great.
Wow. Teach me your ways, Melissa. Mine are not.
I mean, unless it's like a stressful like thing, but like maybe it's a stressful situation, but usually like it's just a typical session. It's fun.
I guess they do take you out of
Kids
reality.
Are funny.
They take you out of reality for a
minute.
minute.
They make you laugh.
Yeah. Well, mine are not the same.
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
I just run. I'll run too many miles to relieve the stress, but it's good. It helps.
You run away.
I run away.
Too many miles?
Yeah.
Yeah, you run away from your you run to sessions.
Yeah, pretty
You have a
much.
session 10
Just
miles away.
come
Or
like
just run.
dripping in sweat. I'm ready.
Bye.
Yeah.
Awesome. So where's the best place people can check you out? Instagram, YouTube, get in contact with you, things like that.
Well, you can follow us on Instagram at Pediatric Speech Pal, on YouTube at Pediatric Speech Pals, pretty much everything at Pediatric Speech Pals. The only one that's different is Instagram. It's like only one pal, not two. So it's Pediatric Speech Pal. But we're on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube and podcasts.
Pediatric Speech Pals at gmail.com.
Yes, if you have any
If you have
questions, yeah, please. We love answering questions, and we really do, like Melissa said, we really like to help people and answer them. We try our best to get to all of them. Usually we just like kind of combine them and make a video about it. But yeah, you can find us on all those. Yeah, we're on Spotify, Apple, Google, and Amazon podcasts. So if you don't want to see our faces and watch me do weird things, you could just listen to us in your car.
Awesome. Definitely. Yeah. All that will be linked in the podcast for you guys that are listening and watching. And like I said, I'm not an SLP, but I just work in the field with marketing and media. And I found your channel super interesting, which is why I reached out.
Cool.
And I found myself going through a bunch of videos. So, if you're just interested in the field, or you're working in the field, or maybe you're just, someone who listens to the podcast that has nothing to do with it, I think you'll find what Melissa and Haley do very interesting. So thank you guys for taking the time to hop on the show.
Thank you so much for
you.
having us. This was really fun.
Of course,
Yeah, we
this
appreciate
was
it.
a blast.